Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 65th episode of the PBPolitical podcast. I'm Eshan Pokhrel.
My name's Cameron Cummings.
Today, we're joined by our senior contributor on the Republican side and also SCOTUS, consultant, Rakshith Ramdas. Welcome to the show, Rock.
Thanks, man.
And today we're talking about some insane news, honestly, that we received over the past, on Tuesday, so it's been like 3 days. President Trump has been removed from the primary ballot in Colorado. So there's been a lot of questions around Trump's eligibility because of his actions, all of his criminal actions. I mean, he's what, like 91 charges right now?
And he's about to get indicted just recently for his fifth time. He's going through his fifth
Oh, he's about
indictment.
to get indicted again, it seems like. So there's been a lot of questions, but on this case, a lot of states are seeing challenges to President Trump on the question of his eligibility for office due to the 14th Amendment. So that's where we're at. Now the Colorado State Supreme Court has ruled that President Donald J. Trump will not be allowed to appear on the Republican primary ballot in a 4-3 decision. So just off the bat, what are y'all's reactions? We'll start with Cameron.
I think we start with Rock.
We'll start with Rock.
He's the guest, you know?
That's true.
I appreciate it. So, it's interesting that state Supreme Court making such a decision without hearing from so, so, so when it's about this case, it's important to understand why Section 3 of how that was here and why. So I'm just going to briefly read into the Section 314 Amendment. Each person shall be a senator, representative in Congress, elected president, and vice president. Hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as any executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or a rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. So I'm going to focus on the last word, what I just said. Engage in insurrection or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof referring to the Constitution of the United States. So when you look back at January 6, 2021, the insurrection that happened, it's debatable whether that was an insurrection or not, but an attack against the United States Congress that was led by supporters of Donald Trump and his flagship. So because of that, there's a lot of debate whether it was an actual insurrection or not. And me personally, I think that it does qualify under the definition of an insurrection because there are people who lost the incoming president, Joe Biden, and trying to understand why that was happening, even though in trying to revert the decision that was made by current Congress at the time. And so, because of that, I think it's important to understand that I think Trump does fall under being removed from the court itself because he did give aid and comfort to the enemies being the supporters that were trying to use Joe Biden as president. So I think there is a strong case that can be made for this. And Cameron, I want to get your thoughts on this as well, man. What do you think about this?
So really, I'm also gonna, piggyback off, the aid or comfort. Um, I'm not gonna say, he encouraged it, but he surely didn't, turn them down. He didn't, try to, persuade them otherwise. And especially I think the big nail in the coffin for me is when he gave that speech. I'm pretty sure not speech, but that video he dropped on, I'm pretty sure it was Twitter, saying, go home, it's okay, blah, blah, blah. I can't, I know it not from memory, but pretty much in summary, go home, uh, stop, but not really painting them as the villains as what I think they are. Um, they went into the Capitol, stole podiums, documents, went through and tore through the Capitol, and then proceeded to sell that stuff. Now a lot of them are arrested in jail. Some of them, gotten out, but a lot of them still in jail. I see it as, I guess, the first domino to fall. Seeing as one state did it, now every other state in there, legally has the right to do that and go through and start that process. If I had to pick the next state, I'd say Georgia. He's already getting, all these crimes, brought to them and, losing a lot of them, getting indicted um, through the Georgia courts. I would not be surprised if they were the next state. If this stands in the state of Colorado, to move on, be the next state to do it. And I know RFK Jr. came out um, and was against it and said he would like to run against him and beat him, you know, not because he was taken off the ballots, but just because he was the better candidate. And I can also see where he's coming from with that. But also I can see in the Constitution, the Colorado courts do have, the right to do what they did.
Yeah, so I'll just give briefly my take, and we'll move on to more of the actual about the yeah, we'll go into more in detail stuff. But I think when the decision came, the fact that it came from Colorado, which is a obviously a state. First, it came from a state court. That's the part I guess people have had the most issue with, because you have a state court saying that a federal elections primary will be altered significantly because of something that a candidate may or may not have done from, like, they haven't been convicted for. So I think that's where a lot of the controversy obviously has come from. Obviously, there's also the partisan controversy. The trials of President Trump have, frankly, been political because they've been happening at a time where the election's starting to ramp up. Attorney General Merrick Garland could have started pursuing these indictments and everything all the way back when he was first, sworn into this position. So there definitely is an element of politicization in this, whether you like President Trump or not. I think everybody can agree with that. But having this kind of play into that, I think is actually sort of bad for, honestly, weirdly for Democrats, because now it kind of feeds into that politicization narrative. Obviously, Colorado's a Democratic state. President Trump did not win it either election in 2016 or 2020. He actually didn't win it in 2016's primary, either in the caucus. He lost to Ted Cruz. So it's an interesting one. I think the argument they've used is the correct one, in the sense that this is the most qualified one. If President Trump can be disqualified from the election, the 14th Amendment Clause 3 or Section 3 is definitely the correct one to take to the federal courts, and where that'll be decided on. So obviously decided 4-3 that President Trump is allowed to be removed from the ballot in Colorado. This has been appealed by the Trump team. They called the ruling, quote unquote, completely flawed. President Trump came out and said that he's not an insurrectionist, and then said with some other stuff and all that. So now they've appealed this to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has until January 4th to rule, because Colorado prints their primary ballots on the 5th. So they need to give a ruling by then. However, today, actually like an hour before we started recording, this case will go to a federal appeals court before it hits the Supreme Court. Jack Smith, special counsel that has been doing a lot of the investigations into President Trump, was the one that requested the Supreme Court do it. And I think that was smart, just to see if we can just get it over with. Have the question in front of the court, the highest court of the country, because you assume that this will be appealed regardless now from like the federal court to the Supreme Court, right? I think that can happen, I believe, right, Rock? And then I assume whatever side loses will end up doing that. So this is going to be this makes it also problematic for his other trials, which would start coming in March. This is kind of messed up the timeline for everything in January or March. There's a lot of 2024 is going to be dominated by Trump's legal issues electorally, and this throws another wrench into it. And I mean, there's a lot to talk about. Let's go back to the 14th Amendment, because this is like the one clause of the 14th Amendment that no one really thinks of. It's obviously the Equal Protection Amendment. It's been cited for Roe versus Wade for abortion. It's been cited for voting rights. It's been cited for like a lot of different. It's a very malleable
14th
amendment.
Amendment's really coming in clutch right now. Just being used in every situation
Yeah,
humanly possible. And 14th
exactly.
Amendment has something to do with it.
Yeah, because no one. I don't think anybody knew about the insurrection. I've read about the insurrection clause, but it sounds something like
I knew about the clause, but I didn't know it was attached to the 14th
yeah.
Amendment
I've
until
never
recently.
associated the 14th Amendment with insurrection clause, but now it's the forefront because, like it said, yeah.
Briefly?
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just going to add context to why it's added to the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, along with the 13th and 15th Amendments, were the post-Civil War amendments that were passed by Congress after Civil War. Basically, the purpose of this clause right here was to ensure that no previously Confederate officers or soldiers from holding office in the new United States that was just forming after the war that had just ended. So basically, it was just trying to get rid of anyone from holding office that was affiliated with the Confederacy. So,
Yeah, so a little bit of like more back. That's completely correct. This actually came about, yeah, because like people like I mean, a lot of people don't know this. Jefferson Davis, the first and only president of the Confederacy, was actually a senator from Mississippi when he defected to the Confederacy during the Civil War. So that's like the reason exactly. Like congressmen that were there's a couple congressmen that were expelled from Congress, a couple senators that were expelled, not due to the 14th Amendment, but they formed the idea of the 14th Amendment through that. That's why there's been, and then there's one caveat to the 14th Amendment. Congress can restore someone's eligibility for this through a 2/3 vote in each house. So there was actually cases of some former Confederates coming back to the Union, uh, disbanding their loyalty for the Confederacy, and the House and the Senate both voted 2/3 to allow them to run for federal office again. So this is actually something that's happened in the past, and this is all due to the Civil War. That being said, that's why I think there's a lot of contention around if you want to, because I think we all agree that the 14th Amendment has a very narrow scope right now, considering the context of the amendment, which is always important in any amendment. Uh, Considering how narrow the scope is, it's created for the Civil War. It wasn't like I mean, then it's very I guess cut and dry what it means, right? So the argument right now everyone's having is do you expand or do you include what President Trump, I guess, would be his rhetoric on January 6th, right? Would be the biggest thing that everyone's looking at when he said things like, what was it, stand down but stand by.
That's what it was.
That was one big thing. But then, yeah, so that's like the biggest contention because Trump didn't do any, like, actively, like, physically didn't do anything that we know of to, like, yeah.
and there's the lack thereof that makes it seem that he engaged in insurrection behavior. Because I think for me personally, I see this as a negligent behavior, and when you define negligence from a legal standpoint, basically engaging in behavior that could be foreseen and it could have been avoided if you had taken action before the consequential action happened. So looking at this from a negligent standpoint, if Trump were able to, it's completely foreseeable that if you say stand down but stand by, you're going to have impact with your words like that. It's going to cause people to take action and get people riled up and try to get their emotions stirred. And when you have such rhetoric, it can lead to changes like that. So it's important to understand that yes, Trump didn't do anything specific. He didn't take action, but his words were consequential and impactful enough that it could have led to action being taken. And in some cases, it did. There were some people that took his words like personally and led attacks and mobs on Capitol. So
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he obviously, like, like, physically, like, he didn't actually, like, defect from
he
the.
rallied the troops.
Yeah, like, he didn't physically, like, defect or anything, like, from, like, an actual, like, doing it perspective, but that's the thing, like, his rhetoric was divisive. I think, yeah, it's a tough one because, like, how much of it is political, like, how much is it protected by the First Amendment? Obviously, political speech is protected by the First Amendment, and then you get into where the political speech might have ended.
Mm-hmm.
That's I guess, a big question. Also, this would have been much easier if the Senate had went ahead and convicted him in January 2021 when they impeached him for the second time. But I think he got to 60 votes, but it didn't get the 67 required to remove him from office. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of issues here. Do you have anything to add in before we move into a little bit of?
Really just piggybacking off of that, like, did was he, was he in there with pitchforks, and flame, and torches? No, but like I said, what he did basically was a rallying call. Whether he wants to admit to it or not, you know, stand down but stand by. And even the people that weren't there probably,
Yeah.
rallied them up. Made them feel something about something they're passionate about, which is Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing like I have to say is like you have to think about. I guess it doesn't. I guess to like in the on. I guess more of to side with like a little bit what Rock is saying. It doesn't matter like if the intent is to have an insurrection against the Constitution of the United States. Then it doesn't matter how successful it was
Hmm.
necessarily. Like I mean, if you classify Trump like January 6th as an insurrection, then which I mean obviously didn't work, but even if it wasn't a serious, like it seemed like a serious attempt at the time, and like even if like if the intent was malicious, I think there's still an argument for it to work out as like a conviction of or a classification of insurrection. So that's I'm assuming that's the line Colorado took in their ruling. One interesting thing about the ruling is that the four judges that sided against President Trump, the were actually all Ivy League law school graduates, and then the three that sided against President or with President Trump were all Denver law graduates, which is something that's kind of interesting. Probably unrelated, but a little interesting, maybe a little bit related, but interesting. And that case name is Anderson versus Griswold. If anybody wants to look at it, we'll put like probably put something of it in the description. Let's go a little bit. We'll come back to all this. Let's go to a little bit of the GOP response. So the four remaining serious, I don't even know if they're serious contenders, but the four remaining visible contenders for the presidency outside of President Trump on the Republican side have all pitched in their responses. Vivek Ramaswamy, like he has done multiple times, came out immediately supporting President Trump. I think it's the smartest thing you could do politically. If you want to have any chance of the nomination, I don't
Hmm.
think he does, but if you
I
want to
don't think
stay,
anyone here has the
I don't think
chance
so
for the
either.
nomination. I think they're all running for second and third place.
But Vivek came out and said that he will withdraw from Colorado's primary unless Trump is restored from the ballot. Again, politically, I think it's a smart move to stay in the good graces of Trump voters. And I went to his Birmingham event to talk to some voters about how they view the race, and a lot of them did like Vivek, but the problem with him is that he's not President Trump. So why would you vote for the substitute good, in this case Vivek Ramaswamy, when you have the actual good President Trump on the ballot? So that's his issue. I don't think he's going to be able to overcome that, unfortunately for him. Ron DeSantis said a lot of things. So he said that the removal of Trump is a Democrat plan to help Trump win the nomination and make it, I guess extrapolating that, make it easier for a Democrat to win the general
Hmm.
election. He also defied what Vivek said. He said he would not remove himself. He said that. So basically, I think DeSantis is kind of in a place where he needs to he wants to take as much help as he can get.
But he also is at
Um,
this point trying to separate himself little by little
yeah, I mean now,
from the Trump image
and
that he has.
I don't even know what he's trying to do because now Nikki Haley's catching up to him and beating him in a lot of polls. So DeSantis is in his own little world. He's saying a lot of things. Nikki Haley still continues to toe the line. She's like the main alternative now. It seems like actually hit 30% in a New Hampshire poll recently. Can she get above that? I don't know. But she said, quote, that's not a democracy about the decision, but still hasn't really found a way to criticize Trump without completely alienating Trump's base, although I think that they're pretty far gone from Nikki Haley. And then finally, Chris Christie said that Chris Christie surprised me. He actually said he does not believe Trump should be prevented from being president by any court. He said that the voters should decide. I think that's like the overwhelming idea of the Republican Party at
Mhm.
this point, and I'm actually a little surprised Christie went with that. So, do you guys have any thoughts about those four? Their comments, and I don't know. I mean, I don't think this is going to change anything in the race, but that's just what they went out and said.
Sure, I guess I can.
Yeah.
I'll let.
Go ahead, yeah.
No,
Okay. Um. So really, if I had to, this is just gonna be a little side thing. If I had to put the people currently running an election, in tiers, it would be former President Trump is in a world of his own in first, large margin. and he hasn't even done any debates or any of the truly what they've been doing. He's been doing his own little separate rallies. I think he did one. Was it in Miami?
Yeah, he went to Miami. He
He
did. He did them close to the debates. Yeah,
doing them doing them half an hour, 45 minutes in the
counter
debates.
programming. Yeah,
So he's in his own world, running in first place. I would say Vivek and Nikki Haley are trailing. By how much I really can't say,
a little
but
bit probably. Yeah,
they're trailing,
yeah,
but they're in his rearview mirror.
yeah.
Um, and I'd say they're running together and trying to push for second place. DeSantis is trailing behind on a wagon in third, and Chris Christie is kicking rocks at the end, barely leaving the starting line, mumbling stuff about Trump. Uh, I would just have to. That's just truly how, if you look at it from from the lens that I am, how the election's going. Um, Trump's winning, and he's not even doing anything. He's taking fire and is still leading the charge, which I think is crazy. But that's just the way he does it. Um, and I'm just going to talk about Vivek mainly. Saying he'd withdraw from the Colorado primary. I think that's good with trying to stick with Trump's voters. Um, but I do kind of agree with DeSantis saying I'm not going to remove myself
Yeah, I
from the
I think
what's the point of removing
yeah,
myself? I need every he was going to win Colorado. Now that gives me a chance
yeah.
to win.
I think Vivek's just like
But Vivek is
he
kind of
knows like if
he's
Trump
trying to
goes
get
down somehow, it's probably him. So
yeah, he
yeah,
wants, or he's best. A lot of people say he wants the vice president nomination. Do I think he's going to get it? No, I don't think Trump trusts Vivek with the
yeah,
nomination.
I don't think so.
Vivek is like he's going to sit there and plot, and I don't think Trump needs a plotter and a schemer as his vice president. That's far from it. Do I think
Lyndon,
he'll run again? Yeah. Do I think he may need to take a break from the internet? Yeah. Vivek is terminally online. That man quotes Twitter, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk more than a 14-year-old kid on Reddit, and it's kind of scary.
yeah, it's I think Vivek. Yeah, I mean his only play if he wants any chance of being the nominee is to stay with in the good grace of Trump. And like I said, like from my experience at that one event in Birmingham, they like Vivek. He had a really good reception, but the problem with him is that he's not Trump. And I mean, like, you can't get around that. The only way to get around that is if Trump is somehow, if this decision is upheld and Trump is removed from the ballots or something else happens, and he's not able to he's not the nominee for the general election, then there's a chance Vivek Ramaswamy is the nominee. Otherwise, I mean, I don't think there's a chance. Rock, you can go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you could. I was going to say, I think Haley and Christie took the best path, in my opinion. Just taking a neutral standpoint, just talking about like the U.S. point of view of how it'd
Hmm.
be wrong for Trump to be removed off the ballot and leave it to the voters. But like Cameron said, I just don't see the point of like Vivek like getting himself on the ballot off the ballot just because Trump did. So I think this completely alienates you from like the moderate base of the Republican Party.
Yeah, I
You
guess.
just pander.
Yeah.
Was that?
Go ahead. Sorry, I was gonna add something at the end, but
Just because Trump, I mean, he just panders to his base, and I think Haley and Chris took this before then. Sanchez, I mean, he's just waffling at this point. He's basically just said, like, I wanted to talk about being removed from the Colorado Club. I don't really see what Santa's trying to say here. He's just trying to get more people to come to his side of the party. So
yeah, I
it's
mean
just,
the benefit of a primaries never turn. That's the other problem, and we have actually on our website we're doing a lot of stuff like about explaining like a lot about the primary system now as we get into Iowa caucuses. Less than a month away, Iowa,
Hmm.
crazy times, but um primaries never turn out the general election audience is much different from the primaries. So you actually that's how President Trump was the nominee in 2016. He never really won large. He never won a majority early on. He'd be winning like 30%. He had like a 30% hold on the base. And when your 30% turns out for primaries, then you're going to win because not everybody comes out to primaries. So I guess that's the thinking for Vivek. Also, again, just to keep in Trump's or in his base's good graces for a future run or for maybe vice pref somewhere in the cabinet, who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's regardless. I don't think any of them are going to be the nominee, anyways.
But also
And
with Vivek, I think there are more than just Trump's side of the Republican Party, and I feel like you could lean to them, but also stick your arm out to the other
Yeah, but
places and try to get a bigger crowd.
is there enough though? Like I don't know. Yeah, who knows?
I don't know.
Because I think
At this point, moderates are going to keep this election. So, I mean, you're cut off with Chris Johnson.
yeah.
I mean, that would be the nomination.
Yeah, well, everybody tends to moderate their messaging of the general. That's far ahead. I mean, Trump and Biden
I'm
will
trying to vote for RFK Jr.
that'll be interesting. I'm excited to see a possible three-way race. We'll talk more about this, especially in the summer. We're gonna go crazy into the potential three-way race. That'll be fun.
Basement podcast is gonna go crazy.
Basement podcast gonna be amazing. Anyways, let's go to a little bit back into like the actual decision and what it means nationwide. So, Colorado is the first one to rule against Trump on the grounds of the 14th Amendment. There are 16 other states that have challenges. In state courts, Maine just got filed one. Michigan, Oregon, New Jersey, Wisconsin. They all have cases against President Trump. In federal courts, Alaska, Arizona, Nevada, New York, New Mexico, South Carolina, Texas, Vermont, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming all have the same question going against President Trump. Lower court cases in Arizona and Michigan were dismissed, but then they've been appealed. And now Colorado's decision is going to a federal appeals court. We thought it'd be going to Supreme Court. It's been deferred to a federal appeals court. And this is I think the most interesting part of this, and the part that no one's really talking about, maybe because it won't happen, people think, but if the federal courts side with Colorado, President Trump, in my understanding, will not be eligible for any ballots nationwide, primary or general. And this is something I think we have a little bit of difference of opinion. So just because like no one knows, this is very unprecedented. This first time it's ever happened. Any of this has ever happened in American history. And yeah, so like if Trump is removed from the ballot because of the 14th Amendment, right? So you have one state, in one state at least, that means that he is viewed as violating a 14th Amendment. Then does that disqualify him from the rest of the country? So that's the question we're at, because it's a state primary. So that's where we're at. And like, I asked a lot of people. I was on the phone with like 4 or 5 other people that were just like wondering the same thing. We couldn't really find a common ground. So do you guys have any what do you guys think?
Yeah, so when you texted me this morning, asked me about it, I was like, just caught off guard by thinking about it. I understand. So, basically, I think the Supreme Court, if they ruled that he's ineligible, I think technically yes, they Trump would be removed off the ballot for all states. But I think you have to consider what their wording will be. So my answer to you was if they either say it's permissible or that he should be removed. I think it's because their wording is either going to be neutral or it's going to be saying yes, he should be removed off the ballot. It's going to be one of the two. So either one would be interesting for me, but I think that right now, I think that the 10th Amendment would come into play because it's a federal election, and then what the 10th Amendment basically says is that anything that's not, decided for the federal government, any powers that are left not for the federal government, it's up to the states. So I mean, the 10th Amendment could come into play as well. So my view is that there's a strong chance that Trump will be removed off the ballot if the Supreme Court decides in the House favor.
Yeah, so I'll give my thoughts then. You can go if you yeah. So I don't see a world where let's say this goes to the Supreme Court, because I think regardless of what happens in the federal appeals court, it'll probably be appealed to the Supreme Court, especially if Trump is ruled to be ineligible. So I think because the 14th Amendment, because if you have one state where the ruling that Trump is in violation of the 14th Amendment, then you can't use the 10th Amendment to say. The question just becomes: does the 10th Amendment supersede the 14th Amendment, and does it supersede a federal ruling? That's where I think that it does not, because the federal court, the highest court in the land, has decided that in one state, Trump is in violation of the 14th Amendment, and since the 14th Amendment's the same everywhere else, right? There's no reason that there's no reason this logic shouldn't be applied equally to every other state in the union, at least at the general election level. So that's where it gets weird because it's a primary election. So in theory, you don't really need to have primary elections. This is a kind of a really like primary elections in this form where every state goes is a relatively new phenomenon in American politics. And we've been talking about this a lot in our history or election history podcast. But I mean, even JFK, they only had like 8 states have primaries, and the rest of
Hmm.
them went to conventions and did it like the old school way. So there's a question of whether state primaries really determine the nominee. Obviously, in 2016, Bernie Sanders basically got cheated out of the Democratic nomination by the establishment Democrats and Hillary Clinton's team. And a lot of people said the primaries don't matter there. They might have a case, um, but so like I don't see how. I think that if this ruling is upheld, I don't think it will be upheld. But if it is upheld, and I actually don't think it should be upheld either until there's any conviction of the president, former president, whatever, then Trump is done. I don't think he can. I don't think there's any way that you can say that one state can have him on the ballot and then other
Hmm.
state or one state can't have him and other states can choose whatever they want.
But that's, I don't know. And also, I think that's just like doom. I wouldn't say doomsday, but like that's worst case scenario. There we go. Would that be happening?
Well, it's
And
50-50 chance, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah, this case is not
and I would.
Supreme. It's allowed, but I don't think they'll apply it to every other state. It's the best option that they would
But
take. But
why wouldn't they
I
apply
feel
to
like
every
they would
state?
open it to every other state. I feel like that's what they would do
yes,
instead of just saying this is
But this is the
your
thing.
mandate of like you are open to do the exact same thing Colorado did.
But then if you
You
do,
have free
but
reign.
if that happens, that means that literally any case that wouldn't even be like because like if they determine that it's illegal in Colorado, then it wouldn't. All they'd have to do is just because no state court can overturn their ruling, so they'd
Hmm.
have
yeah,
to.
each own merits. Yes,
But they can just.
in the nature of the court, how it is now. Uh, Me personally, I feel like come down to the wire. I feel like it would be a 5-4 decision. Congress joining the liberals if it were to be upheld and it truly move off the ballot. Or either it could be a 6-3 or 5-4 with Kavanaugh joining as well. Um, Either it's going to be very close. I feel like it's not going to be a very large margin between the justices on the Supreme Court, and I really doubt it'll be unanimous either. But yeah, I think that going off what Cameron just said, it's either going to be yes, it can happen, and move it to every other state, or it's going to be Trump's moved off the ballot in all the states, which
Yes,
I serious extreme path that the court can take it.
I just don't see how they can justify because like the whole point of the Supreme Court is to clarify how the Constitution should be applied. So I feel like if they do something where they like you're saying where they rule, yeah, Colorado take them off, and then we just have to wait for every legal challenge in every state. That's just like I think that's malpractice because like they need to. Their point is to be definitive, right? They were definitive when they overturned Roe versus Wade. They were definitive. Well, they were like more definitive in the sense like, yeah, this isn't a federal issue. This is a state issue. Which I mean, sure, but I think when because this is a federal election, this isn't like a body autonomy question. This is a federal election, um, so the court should probably apply it uniformly across all 50 states and DC, and I guess like Puerto Rico and stuff. Even though they can't vote in the presidential election, but yeah, I don't see. I feel like personally, if they decide, I mean, honestly, either way, I don't think they should be. I don't think they should remove him until there's. I mean, this shouldn't even be a question until there's a conviction, because I mean, and you're innocent until proven guilty in the United States. Despite however much evidence there's against you or whatever's happened, you're still innocent until proven guilty. He hasn't been proven guilty yet.
Yeah.
I don't think this yet. Yeah, I don't think this is a question that should happen right now, but it's come right now. That honestly, politically, if we let's talk about a little bit of the political ramifications. I think this actually kind of hurts Democrats. I don't know now. Does it hurt Democrats enough to where if Trump is convicted, then he wins the election? I don't know, but I think it kind of plays into the whole people seeing this whole legal battle for Trump as politicized, which I think
Hmm.
it actually has been because it's a simple fact that this came during an election year. They could have done this 3 years ago. The Department of Justice did drag their feet for really no reason, and I think this will actually kind of play into that. So and that's actually kind of troubling because there's a very real possibility President Trump did violate the 14th Amendment and is in uh like contest with that and should be maybe he should be removed from ballots or whatever. Shouldn't be allowed to run for president again. But when you make it like when you do it this way, where it's like done before the election or done before like the court cases are really kicking off and done before convictions come, then I feel like it kind of manufactures itself as like politicized,
Yeah,
and I think that that's going to definitely hurt
I think if they would have just done it
Democrats.
right off the bat the second Biden was inaugurated,
I think
I
that was the
think it would have
smartest
been
thing to do. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why. I mean, this would have all been if the Senate had
over.
went ahead and removed him as president of the United States, which I think if you're coming back, I mean, I guess there's more evidence now, but like if that had happened, then this wouldn't even be a question. We'd have like 20 days of President Mike Pence, and then we would have had a much more a much calmer, I guess, on the political side for the Biden administration. And yeah, it would have been a much different landscape. But yeah, I mean, do you guys have any thoughts about how this is going to impact the general? And then we'll get out of here, I guess. Go ahead. Dale.
Yeah, some sense. It's going to make it more general election. I feel like it's going to make Biden's path to winning the election more difficult because he's going to have to deal with people saying that he got rid of his number one opponent in the general election. Um, I do see why you would say that courts shouldn't have any opinion on whether Trump can be removed or can't go on the ballot. But then again, I think you have to call into question what is the point of the court if not to hear cases about this matter before an election. The timing of it is horrible. I agree with you on that, but I think every case should be heard on its own merits. Um, and we'll see what would happen in the future. But as of right now, I think that yes, the cases should be brought to the court, but in the political ramifications of it, I think it is horrible for the Democrats. But this is how it should be left and decided. No matter what happens, I think this is the general election.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can.
Not really. I mean, like I don't know. I guess currently I don't see how it's going to fully impact the general. Um, but say the ruling comes out and it's however it comes out, then whenever that comes out, come and ask me, and I think I'll give
Yeah,
a much different response of how I think it
Yeah.
impacted the general election. But right now, I think, you know, I don't think it's too much of an impact. Especially, I think it more looks poorly on Biden's aspect. How it's been
Yeah.
politicized, and oh, it's so close to election time. Elections are a year away, and now you're bringing this up.
yeah,
I feel like it's more of a hit to him than if anything.
yeah. I think people just know Trump. They're like, okay, and that's the thing. Like, people have
I think
President.
people are desensitized to it.
Exactly. He just got. It just came out yesterday. It was broken by the Detroit Daily or something like Detroit Press or something like that. Local paper out of Michigan that President Trump was on audio pressuring two election workers in Michigan not to certify their
Hmm.
election results. That just came out yesterday. I've seen no coverage of it. I think we're about to cover it on TikTok today, on our TikTok, but no mainstream coverage of that. And that's something
People
they
are
have.
desensitized
The
to
Trump, yeah,
just
it's
insane things,
it's
wacky. I'm gonna
yeah,
call it wacky.
it's wacky. It's a wacky political environment, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's just. Well, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think with everything going on in Israel and the Middle East and Yemen and even with this stuff, there's like too much going on. But yeah, it's been a mess. This won't be the last podcast of the year. We'll do one more next week before we go to the new year, which is going to be a big one. 2024 election year podcast. We got our
Yeah.
election year in general. We're gonna be in the basement again next week, hopefully.
Yes, basement
Uh,
podcast making a
we're
return.
back in the basement podcast right now, but we'll do a lot more. We have new articles coming out soon. We're going to be doing a lot more of our first. Just started off. We're going to be explaining to everybody how these primaries, how these elections really work. Not about what's happening in them, more about the processes of them. So y'all can understand a bit more what's going on. Because I mean, sometimes we don't even know. Like, what is a super delegate really? I mean, like, you're going to find out. I mean, I barely know. So we're going to be doing articles like that as the new year comes around. We'll be keeping up with this Trump stuff. There'll be a ruling by January 5th, 4th, by January 4th, one way or the other. And we'll probably be able to cover that in the first podcast of the new year, probably. And keep going to the website. Go to Instagram Reels, TikTok. Follow Cam on Instagram. He's the engagement. Do you still need the engagement?
No, I don't need.
Oh, never mind. Don't follow Cam.
I'm happy now.
Cam hit 1,000
I've done my
followers.
piece. I don't need any more followers.
If Rock needs engagement, we'll put his stuff in the.
Oh, I won't turn down engagement, but I don't need it. I'm not gonna be begging for engagement.
Y'all can find
engagement comes my way.
I think y'all can find both of their Instagrams in the website in the staff section, so y'all can go hit them up, I guess. So keep reading. Thank y'all for listening. Happy holidays. I guess will be the last one before Christmas and Kwanzaa. Wish I had.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
big shout out.
Yeah. So, all right. Thank y'all for listening. I'm Eshan Pokhrel.
I'm Cameron Cummings.
I'm Rakshith Ramdas.
And goodbye.